Okay, good morning, everybody.
Dobré ráno.
Before we start, I would like to do a little recap of what we did yesterday.
Predtým ako začneme, chcel by som ešte zhrnúť včerajšok.
Maybe you can help me. What did we do yesterday?
Čo sme včera robili?
Yesterday evening. Let's stick with the last presentation. So just something you remember. You don't have to give a complete summary.
Čokoľvek, čo si pamätáte, vyťahnite.
Just something that sticked in your mind.
O Řecku sme sa bavili.
Po čom?
O Řecku, ty války.
Greece, Greek Wars.
The Grecian Wars. Yeah. What about the Grecian Wars?
A čo sme o nich hovorili?
What did we try to see in that line? What did I try to show?
Čo som ukazoval na tej linii?
Ipsus,
Ipsus.
Heraklia, Activum a Beneventum. Asculum, Beneventum. Ty 4.
Okay.
Základy.
Okay. Anything else about?
Ešte niečo?
A jak se aplikují na druhou světovou válku?
A ich and their application on the Second World War.
Oh yeah, also, yeah, we did a short line on the Second World War. And why did we do that? To show what?
Similarity.
Čo sme chceli tým ukázať?
Prešli k tej informačnej vojne.
Then we went to information war.
We went to information warfare. Yeah.
And we showed that even though we are not written in the Bible, we are living Bible history.
Yeah. So we are.
Že aj keď to není priamo zapísané, žijeme biblickú históriu.
Kind of live between verses. And I tried to show I showed that to support the idea that a story of Pyrrhus, which is kind of in between verses or in between histories, is the same thing as what we are living in.
Ukázal som to, lebo som vlastne ukazoval, že tie dejiny, ktoré my vyťahujeme ohľadne Pýra, nie sú priamo zaznamenané v tých veršoch, ale sú to vlastne presne tie isté dejiny, ktoré žijeme aj my. Že nie sme priamo zaznamenaní vo veršoch, ale žijeme tie dejiny posledného času.
Because if you go to Daniel 11 verse 40,
keď sme v Danielovi 11:40,
40a and 40b,
40a, 40b,
everything in between is it's a big jump in time.
Tam je vlastne taký veľký skok v čase. V rámci toho jedného verša.
1798 to 1989.
1798 a až potom 89.
Almost 200 years.
Takmer 200 rokov.
So the question is all the history in between, is that outside Bible, outside of prophecy, outside of Bible history?
Takže tá otázka zostáva, všetky dejiny, ktoré sa nachádzajú medzi tým, sú vlastne dejiny mimobiblické, alebo sú dejiny, ktorými sa nemáme zaoberať, nie sú zaznamenané v Biblii?
Because there is not really a verse I could think of that really sets a specific date somewhere in between.
Není
verse
verš
in the Bible.
v Biblii, o ktorom by som vedel, o ktorom by som vedel, že vlastne že zaznamenáva nejaký dátum, ktorý je medzi týmito dvoma dátumami. 1844
Okay.
1844, to nie v Biblii. Sorry.
Very good. But okay, so then we have 1844 is the last maybe time.
Takže máme
verse.
V Biblii máme zaznamenané roky 1798, 1844 a potom až 89.
Maybe you could argue 1863.
Možno 1863 ešte.
But there's this big gap of super important history of Advent history, external events, internal events.
Ale medzi tým sú také veľké skoky vlastne, v ktorých sa udiala dôležitá adventná história.
Where you cannot really find a verse in the Bible that is pointing to that history. Literally.
A nemôžeme doslovne nájsť verš, ktorý hovorí o tých dejinách.
And that's kind of a history we have studied in our movement quite a lot, like Advent history from 1863 to the time we are living in now, internally, but also externally.
A to sú dejiny, ktoré my sme študovali veľmi podrobne v našom hnutí, vlastne dejiny adventizmu. Aj externé dejiny, aj vnútorné v rámci hnutia.
Internally about the development in our church, like how the jewels of William Miller got scattered.
Vnútorne ohľadne rozvoju vlastne našej cirkvi, ako tie pravdy Williama Millera začali byť rozptýlované.
Are you familiar with the study on, I think it's called the Desolation of Jerusalem?
Poznáte tú štúdiu zničenia Jeruzalema?
That's the history from 1863 to 1989.
To sú vlastne
Blank history.
to sú dejiny od 1863 do 89.
But also externally we look into this history. We have the American Revolution or the American Civil War.
Ale rovnako keď pozeráme vlastne ako tie vonkajšie dejiny, ktoré sa diali, ako americká občianska vojna,
The Sunday Law in 1888.
nedeľný zákon 1888.
And recently we have been considering the First World War, Second World War.
A my sme nedávno začali zvažovať prvú, druhú svetovú vojnu.
The rise of Russia and communism
Vzrast Ruska a komunizmu.
in 1917, the October Revolutions, etc.
1917, oktobrová revolúcia a tak ďalej.
That was already part of Brother Pippinger's studies in 1989. It's in the Time of the End magazine.
Toto všetko už bolo súčasťou štúdie, ktorú robil brat Pippinger v 89.
We cannot really give a verse in the Bible that refers to that history.
We can already give?
We cannot give a verse in the Bible that really points to the October Revolutions, for example.
Nemôžeme vyťahnuť nejaký verš z Biblie, ktorý by vlastne poukazoval na oktobrové revolúcie. Oktobrovú revolúciu.
But we still think it is of prophetic importance to study.
Ale stále v tom vidíme prorocky dôležité tieto veci študovať. Actually, if you look at pioneers' writing, it's only history. So much history. Like pioneers' writings.
Mm-hmm.
On any kind of...
Yeah, they studied a lot history.
Vlastne tie spisy pionierov, keď sa pozeráme, to je len sama história, oni strašne veľa študovali dejiny.
Yeah. So for 1798 there's a verse in the Bible. For 1844 there's a verse in the Bible. Maybe you can give us 1840 there's a verse in the Bible.
Na tieto dátumy máme verše v Biblii, ktoré sú tu na tabuli.
And there's a verse in the Bible for 1989.
Potom 89.
And then it becomes 1863. You can maybe do with the chiasm of the 2520. You could
1863 vidíme vlastne v tej chiastickej štruktúre 25-20.
But then it's kind of open. There's not really verses in the Bible, but this is like a super important time period.
A potom je to také nejaké také voľné, že tam presne tie verše nestanovujú tie dejiny, ale pritom sú tie dejiny veľmi dôležité.
We recognize a lot of events internally and externally of prophetic significance.
Rozpoznávame v tých dejinách mnoho udalostí, ktoré majú prorockú dôležitosť jak vnútorne, tak vonkajšie.
So that's one thought. The other thought comes from this history, from this study.
Ďalšia myšlienka je z tohto štúdia.
It's the study of maybe we should do it a little bit. It's the study of the repeat of Daniel 11.
Toto je štúdia vlastne ohľadne toho, ako sa Daniel 11 opakuje.
We understand already for almost 30 years
My už 30 rokov rozumieme,
that Daniel 11 verse 40 to 45, the last verses of Daniel 11,
že posledné verše Daniela 11, 40 až 45,
is the time period we are living in.
to je čas, v ktorom žijeme.
And these are the last verses of earth history.
A sú to posledné verše histórie tejto zeme.
Because the next verse after verse 45 is Daniel 12:1. This is where Michael stands up.
Pretože ďalší Ďalší verš po Danielovi 11.45 je Daniel 12.1 a to je, kedy Michal povstane a uzavrie sa
So these
milosť.
6 verses before are the last events of Earth history.
Tých 6 veršov predtým sú tie posledné udalosti histórie tejto zeme.
And verse 40 starts, and at the time of the end,
A verš 40 začína a v čase konca.
the king of the south shall come against the king of the north.
Král juhu príde voči kráľovi severa.
And we understand that that was 1798.
My sme rozumeli, že to bol 1798.
And then the king of the north returns to the king of the south, which we understand to be 1989.
A král severa potom sa ako spätne oborí na kráľa juhu a tomu rozumieme ako 89.
This is where the king of the south, which was the Soviet Republic,
Toto bol kráľ juhu, čo bola vlastne sovietský zväz.
came to his end.
Prišiel k svojmu koncu.
And then the next verse it says, and then the king of the north enters into the glorious land.
A potom král severa vojde do krásnej zeme.
We understand that to be what do we understand that to be?
Ako tomu rozumieme, čo to je? Čo je to krásna zem?
Amerika.
USA and what prophetic event when the king of the north goes?
Aká prorocká udalosť to je?
The king of the north enters also into the glorious land, it says.
Nedělný zákon.
The Sunday law. So we say the next verse, so we have verse 40a and verse 40b.
Čiže máme verš 40a, 40b,
Is the Sunday law.
a potom nedeľný zákon je 41.
So this is what we did yesterday as well, that we kind of like, we are now living here in 2019, 1989 is past, Sunday law is in the future.
Toto je to, čo sme vlastne robili včera, že 89. už prešiel, nedeľný zákon je ešte budúcnosť.
So we're living kind of like in between Bible verses.
Takže žijeme ako keby medzi dvoma veršami.
Now the interesting thing is that in 2016,
V 2016
this study on Daniel 11 developed. 2017.
Vlastne bola rozvinutá táto štúdia ohľadne Daniela 11.
And it gave some more light on the time period between 1989 and the Sunday law.
A to nám dalo viac svetla na obdobie medzi 89. a nedeľným zákonom.
I don't think I will go into the details of the study,
Nemyslím, že pôjdem cez tú štúdiu detailne,
but I would like to at least show the logic of what this study does in the
ale chcel by som aspoň ukázať takú logiku toho, čo vlastne k čomu nás to privádza.
the principles that are used.
Tie princípy, ktoré sú tu použité.
And that is, if you go to Daniel 11,
Ideme do Daniela 11,
verse 40 and 41. Let's read verse 40 and 41.
verše 40 až 41. A v tom čase, keď tomu bude mať byť koniec, podrga sa s ním kráľ juhu. A kráľ severa príde na neho ako výchrica, s vozmi a s jazdcami a s mnohými loďami. A príde do zemí, zaplaví a prejde. Potom príde do krásnej zeme a mnohé zeme klesnú, ale títo uniknú z jeho ruky, Edom a Moab a prvotina synov Amonových.
So we see here in verse 40a, we see that the king of the north receives its deadly wound.
Takže vidíme v 40. verši, že král severa dostane smrteľnú ránu.
And then the rest of the verses, verse 40b, 41 and the rest,
A potom tie ostatné verše, vlastne tá druhá časť a tie ďalšie verše,
we see that the king of the north returns.
vidíme, že král severa sa navráti.
It resurrects,
Ako keby je
comes back to life.
skresený k životu.
And in this resurrection, or in this rise to power,
A v tomto vzraste k moci
we see that it conquers 3 geographical areas.
vidíme, že porazí 3 geografické oblasti.
First, in verse 40b, the king of the north defeats the king of the south.
Je to vo verši 40b. Král severa porazí kráľa juhu.
So you see in verse 40, the king of the north defeats the king of the south.
Král severa porazí kráľa juhu.
In verse 40b,
Vo verši 42. časť.
and in verse 41, it defeats the glorious land.
A vo verši 41 porazí krásnu zem.
The glorious land. And then you see in verse 43
A potom vo verši 43
that it conquers or defeats Egypt. It enters into Egypt.
vidíme, že porazí Egypt.
So you have here the king of the north conquering the king of the south, the glorious land in Egypt.
Král severa porazí kráľa juhu, krásnu zem a Egypt.
And we understand this to be Russia or the Soviet Republic or Russia,
A tomuto rozumieme ako Rusko alebo Sovietsky zväz,
the USA,
Spojené štáty
and the rest of the world.
a zbytok sveta.
And when they have conquered these three enemies,
Keď vlastne títo traja nepriatelia už sú porazení,
we understand that the king of the north becomes receives its power back again, and it becomes the king. It sits on the throne.
rozumieme potom, že ten král severa má znova plnú vládu nad svetom, dostáva svoju korunu nad svetom.
And this is something we always showed to see the parallel between the rise of the king of the north in the past, in history.
A toto sme vždy ukazovali takú paralelu v tom, ako vlastne vzrastá ten král severa, ako prichádza k moci.
We were just talking about it, about these Aryan states,
Práve sme hovorili o týchto ariánskych kmeňoch,
where this animal in Daniel, this beast in Daniel 7,
táto šelma v Danielovi 7,
which has 10 horns,
ktorá má 10 rohov.
3 of those horns are plucked out,
3 z tých rohov sú vyvrátené
and then 7 remain, and when the 3 horns are plucked out, this little horn comes up.
a keď tie 3 sú vyvrátené, tak ten malý vzrastie.
So we understand that these 3 horns need to be removed first,
Takže,
before the king of the north, the papacy, can reign as a king.
takže tie 3 malé rohy musia byť odstránené predtým, ako môže král severa, teda pápežstvo, vládnuť ako král.
So that's what we see in this history, and we can see that in our history as well.
Toto vidíme aj v našich dejinách. It's also in Daniel 8 with the pagan role.
Yeah, that's the other line. Yeah. So you can see and this was in what year is this? What we mark this as?
Toto je ktorý rok?
Where you can say the king of the north.
Že odkedy sa vlastne počíta vláda malého rohu? 538.
538. So, and this is where this line of Daniel 11, or this study, starts a little bit.
A tu vlastne začína tá štúdia z Daniela 11.
I will erase this. Let me think for a second. What we found in Daniel 11, that there is some some similarities in the verses in the beginning of Daniel 11 and in the end.
My sme našli, že vlastne na začiatku Daniela a na konci Daniela sú určité podobnosti medzi tými veršami.
In the beginning of Daniel 11, and then I'm talking about verse 5 to 14 or 15.
Vlastne tie prvé verše z Daniela 11, takých 5 až 14,
16.
alebo 16.
There you see a rise of the king of the north.
Vidíme vzrast kráľa severa.
And it's also conquering certain or defeating certain enemies.
A je to vlastne porážanie nepriateľov.
And the Bible uses certain words that we find in Daniel 11:40 and 45 until 45 as well.
Biblia používa určité slova alebo vyjadrenia, ktoré nachádzame aj v tých posledných veršoch 40 až 45.
When you start in verse 4, we read that Daniel 11. We read in verse 4 of Daniel 11 that the Grecian Empire is divided into the four winds of heaven. That's what we discussed yesterday.
Danielovi 11.4 vlastne vidíme, ako to grécke kráľovstvo je rozdelené na 4, o tom sme hovorili včera.
And then if you jump to the next verse,
Potom ďalší verš.
suddenly there are two left.
Zrazu sú tam už len dvaja králi.
From that time onward you only see the king of the south and the king of the north.
A odtiaľto ďalej už je vždy len kráľ severu a juhu.
And here is always this strife among these two generals.
A stále je medzi vlastne týmito dvoma boj.
But to come from these, you have these four generals.
Títo štyria generáli.
The history tells us, and it's even in the verse of verse 5.
V 5. verši sa píše,
One of these kings, one of these generals, is the king of the south,
že jeden z týchto generálov je vlastne kráľ juhu.
which is Ptolemy.
To bol Ptolemaj.
And Ptolemy has a general.
On má generála.
And Ptolemy says to his general to go into the area of Babylon to conquer that area of Syria.
A on vlastne, ten generál mal ísť do oblasti Babylona, aby porazil Sýriu.
And that's what he does.
A to spravil.
But and this general is Seleucus.
A to je Seleukus, tento generál toho Ptolemaja.
But this Seleucus becomes so powerful and great, he is conquering even more, and he becomes even stronger than his own boss, so to speak.
Ale on tak zmocnil na sile, že sa stal vlastne silnejší ako jeho vlastný, ako keby šéf.
We have so you have the king of the south.
Takže máme kráľa juhu,
He has a general,
ktorý má generála
and he conquers first the part of Syria
a najprv porazil časť Sýrie,
or Babylon,
alebo Babylon,
and then later on
potom neskôr
he conquers the area of Cassander, which is another general,
Potom neskôr porazil Kassandrové územie
and the area of Lysimachus.
a Lysimachar.
So this general conquers 3 geographical areas,
On porazil 3 geografické oblasti.
and I think you could also find that in what verse did you say? Daniel.
Yeah, but I think that's something else. That's the rise of pagan Rome, Daniel 8.
Daniel 8:9. Yeah, okay, that's
yes,
true.
Daniel 8:9.
Okay, that's it. Okay, yeah, that's true. So you said you see here that this king, this general Seleucus,
Tento generál Seleukus
he conquers 3 geographical areas,
porazí vlastne 3 geografické územia.
and after he did that, he becomes here in Daniel 11. He becomes the king of the north.
A potom, ako to spravil, stal sa kráľom severa.
Now he's the king of the north, and prophetically he's the real king. He has a crown on his head.
Že stáva sa kráľom severa.
He only can be that when he conquered these 3 geographical areas.
Ale to mohlo byť, až keď porazil všetky tie 3 oblasti.
So you can see a parallel with our history, but also with the history of 538.
Vidíme paralelu s našimi dejinami, ale tiež s dejinami v 538.
If you make a jump in Daniel 11 to verse 16,
Keď trošku preskočíme do verša 16,
between verse 5 or 6 and 16 there is these battles that take place between the king of the north and the south.
medzi veršami 5 a 16 sú tie boje medzi kráľom juhu a severa.
But in verse 16 he enters into the glorious land. It says in verse 16,
V 16. verši vojde do krásnej zeme.
but he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. 16.
Daniel 11.16. A ten, ktorý príde proti nemu, bude robiť podľa svojej vôle a nebude nikoho, kto by obstál pred ním a postaví sa i v krásnej zemi a skaza bude v jeho ruke.
So we have here a king
Máme tu kráľa,
that conquers 3 geographical areas,
ktorý porazil 3 geografické oblasti,
and then he sits on his throne
potom sedí na svojom tróne
in 281.
a toto je v roku 281.
But this is when he defeated Lysimachus.
Vtedy porazil Lysimacha.
At the end of this line, in verse 16, or it's not the end, but of the king of the north, but it's in verse 16, he enters into the glorious land.
Vo verši 16 vojde do krásnej zeme.
He enters into the glorious land, and that is in 63 BC.
A to sa stalo v roku 63 pred Kristom.
And he goes into the
Just put minus in front of the number.
He enters into the glorious land.
Čiže vojde do krásnej zeme.
So, what I'm going to do is we're going to parallel this
A teraz ukážeme tú paralelu
with the history of 538,
s dejinami od 538.
which was also a history where the king of the north started to reign.
To boli vlastne dejiny, tiež kedy král severa začal vládnuť.
He sat on the throne of the earth
Zasadol na trón sveta.
after he conquered 3 geographical areas of 3 enemies.
Potom ako porazil 3 tie geografické oblasti alebo 3 nepriateľov.
And then these verses, and this is Daniel 11, verse 5 to 16.
Toto sú verše Daniel 11, 5 až 16.
In these verses, on this line, you can see a battle between the king of the north and the king of the south. One way and the other way.
V týchto veršách vidíme neprestajný boj medzi kráľom juhu a severa.
In the next verse, without going super into the details,
A v ďalšom verši bez toho, aby sme išli do veľkých detailov,
there is a peace treaty mentioned.
Sa tu spomína mierová dohoda.
In verse 6 it says, and in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall she stand for his arm, but she shall be given up. And they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times.
V 6. verši sa píše, ale po niekoľkých rokoch sa spolčia a dcera kráľa juhu príde ku kráľovi severa, aby učinila mier, ale nezadrží v sebe síly ramena, ani neobstojí on, ani jeho rame, lež bude vydaná ona i tí, ktorí ju dovedú, i ten, ktorý ju splodil, ako i ten, ktorý ju posilňoval v tých časoch.
So there was a peace treaty or a peace agreement made.
Takže bola spravená mierová dohoda.
And one of the deals they made between the king of the north and the south is that the daughter of the king of the south married with the king of the north.
Jedna z tých dohôd, ktoré spravili, bola, že tá dcéra kráľa juhu si vzala za muža kráľa severa.
So this was his daughter. This daughter was called Bernice.
Jej meno bolo Berenika.
The king of the north, he divorced his wife he already had, which was called Laodice.
Král Severa sa vlastne rozviedol s tou Laudis,
He
to bola
sets
jeho
it-
manželka.
He sets his wife aside and he marries the daughter of the king of the south.
Svoju ženu dal nabok a oženil sa za dceru kráľa Juhu.
But just as this verse says, this will not hold very long.
Ale tak, jak hovorí tento verš, že toto netrvalo dlho.
The king of the north, he kind of regrets his decision to divorce his wife.
Ten král Severa to ľutoval, že vlastne sa rozviedol s tou svojou manželkou.
So he brings in his former wife again into the palace, so to speak.
A znova ju privedie naspäť do paláca.
This wife she thought this is never going to happen again to me.
A ona si povedala, toto sa mi už viac nestane.
So she killed Bernice, this other wife of her husband.
Ona zabila tú Bereniku,
She killed her husband,
aj toho svojho muža.
and she put her son that she had with the king on the throne. So he became the new king.
A vlastne toho svojho syna, ktorého mala s tým svojím bývalým
So when the
mužom,
king of the
dala
south,
na trón.
so when the king of the south heard that story that her son got killed, or it was his, or her brother actually. In the meantime, it was her brother that was the king of the south.
Keď král Juhu v tom čase, už to vlastne na tróne kráľa Juhu sedel brat tej Bereniky a keď to počul, že bola zabitá,
He got angry and he called his armies and moved to the king of the north.
veľmi sa nahneval, zavolal svoje armády a išiel vlastne akože proti kráľovi Severa.
And that's addressed in verse 7.
To je o tom sa píše v 7. verši.
Because it says, but out of a branch of her roots, that's her brother,
No potom povstane muž z mládnika jej koreňov, to je jej brat,
shall one come up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north.
na jeho mieste a príde k vojsku a vojde do pevnosti kráľa Severa a bude konať proti ním a zmocní sa ich.
And a new war has started,
Začala znova ďalšia vojna,
where the king of the south comes up against the king of the north.
kedy kráľ Juhu ide proti kráľovi Severa
And he enters into the fortress.
a vchádza do pevnosti.
So if we compare that with this history,
Ak to porovnáme s týmito dejinami
and we see that this is the king of the north,
a vidíme, že toto je kráľ Severa,
that's the papacy,
to je pápežstvo,
then we understand from Daniel 11 verse 40,
z Daniela 11.40 rozumieme,
the king of the south comes into the picture again in this time period of 1798.
že král Juhu znova vchádza na scénu vlastne v tomto čase okolo 1798. Král Juhu vchádza na scénu v tom roku 1798.
Where are these other colors? Need to put them in. Right. So we talk here about verse 5, verse 6, and verse, I think this is 7 and 8.
To sú verše 5, 6 a 7, 8.
And now the interesting part of this history is that when we know that the king of the south comes against the king of the north. It says verse 40. In verse 40 says the king of the south pushes against the king of the north, and that marks 1798.
V 40. verši, v tej prvej časti sa píše, že v tom čase, keď tomu bude mať byť koniec, podrgá sa s ním kráľ Juhu. To nám značí na 1798, kedy vlastne kráľ Juhu, Francúzsko prišlo proti pápežstvu kráľovi Severa.
So I would like to line that up with 1798.
A to dávam do linie s
Maybe that's it.
line the up one.
Yeah, I line it up with verse 7 and 8.
A to je vlastne v línii s tým veršom 7 až 8.
The interesting thing is that if you look into this history, and especially in this time period,
Keď sa pozrieme do týchto dejín,
that before the king of the south pushed against the king of the north, or started the war,
predtým ako kráľ Juhu prišiel na kráľa Severa,
there was a peace agreement between these two
tak medzi nimi bola mierová dohoda.
entities, which was in 1799.
A to bolo 1797.
Not plus one, minus one. Which was the Treaty of Tolentino.
A to bola vlastne, volalo sa to dohoda v Tolentinu.
You could read on internet about that.
Môžete to nájsť na internete.
It's a peace agreement between the Papal States and how would you call it? France, or the France of Napoleon.
A to bola vlastne dohoda medzi pápežskými štátmi a Napoleónovým Francúzskom.
Revolutionary France.
Revolučným Francúzskom.
Because this is the time period of the French Revolution.
Toto všetko je obdobie francúzskej revolúcie.
And Napoleon, as a general, he sends his, or as a general, he sends his general Berthier to Rome to take the Pope captive.
A Napoleon ako generál vlastne posiela toho, Napoleon posiela svojho generála Berthiera, aby zajal pápeža.
But that was only because there was, so the reason, it was interesting that there was a peace treaty before in the year.
Tá mierová dohoda tam predtým je zaujímavá.
And if you study this history, and then you see that the reason why Napoleon entered or sent his general to Rome or to the Vatican.
Ak študujeme tie dejiny, že prečo vlastne Napoleon poslal svojho generála do Vatikána,
is because there happened something here in this history, just as there happened something here. There was someone got killed.
Niekto bol vlastne zabitý.
Napoleon, in this time period before, or because of this peace treaty, Napoleon puts his own, I think it was his own brother, as a ambassador in the Vatican. It was an ambassador.
Tesne predtým vlastne Napoleon, myslím, že svojho brata dal ako veľvyslanca do Vatikánu.
And was it his brother that got killed? Or?
I think it was again the woman. There was something with the marriage. There was a marriage to be arranged.
Yeah, I think he was about to get married with someone.
I'm not sure about this.
Yeah,
I know there was a marriage.
There was a marriage involved, but I think the brother of Napoleon, the ambassador, he got killed. He got shot in Rome during a feast in Rome that took place.
A ten brat bol zabitý vlastne počas nejakého sviatku v Ríme.
So the king of the north, the papacy, kind of like ignored the peace treaty they had.
Čiže vlastne dohoda bola porušená na strane kráľa Severa.
Just as this king of the north messed it up.
Presne tak, ako aj tuto to bolo zo strany kráľa Severa, kto porušil dohodu.
And that was, sorry?
As always.
As always. And that's why Napoleon saw a reason to go to the papacy and say like, okay, it's done now. We take the Pope captive and we, how do you say, we kind of take away the power of the Papal States.
A tedy Napoleon povedal, tak stačilo, zajmeme pápeža a vezmeme mu moc.
So the interesting thing, and then the interesting thing is that this, another detail is that in 1798 we know that Berthier, this general, he entered into Rome, he entered into the Vatican state, he entered even into the palace of the Pope, and he just knocks his door and he takes the Pope captive. He's like, I'll take you now.
Takže ten zaujímavý detail, ktorý tu je práve ten, že ten generál Berthier pochodoval nielen do Talianska, do Vatikánu, priamo do sídla pápeža a proste ho len zobral. Vošiel až do jeho pevnosti.
Which is similar to the language in verse 7, where this king of the south enters into the fortress of the king of the north.
A to je vlastne presne ten jazyk toho verša 7, kde sa píše, že ten kráľ juhu príde k vojsku a vojde do pevnosti kráľa Severa.
So you see an entering into the fortress here, and you see an entering into the fortress here.
Takže na obidvoch miestach vidíme vstup až do pevnosti.
How long is this period? What time period is this? How does the Bible describe this time period? How long?
Ako dlho, aký dlhý je tento čas, ako to Biblia popisuje?
From 538 to 1798.
1260.
That's the 12th section. Is there another way how the Bible describes this time
Ešte má
period?
Biblia na to iné pomenovania. 3,5 years.
Times and a half. So you have these 3.5
3,5 času
times. Prophetic times.
prorockého.
But the interesting thing is, which add to this line, is that this time period is not 3.5 but 35 years.
Toto je 35 rokov, alebo sa to môže povedať aj 3,5 10 ročia.
So far we find a lot of similarities.
To je vlastne veľa podobností.
So you
It's
see-
like 3,5 decades.
Yeah, 3.5 decades. Yeah, 3.5 times 3.5 decades. Yeah. So you see a lot of similarities. You see 3 horns being taken down. You see the king of the north rising.
Vidíme tu mnoho podobností, ako král severa povstáva a tie 3 rohy museli pred ním padnúť.
Then the next thing you see is a peace agreement.
Potom ďalšia vec je mierová dohoda.
This one is not in the Bible,
O tomto sa nepíše v Biblii,
but this one is in the
ale
Bible.
o tomto áno.
And this one we recognize in history.
Toto sme len videli v dejinách.
Therefore, this becomes prophetic significance as well.
Takže sa to stalo pre nás ako, že to má prorocký význam.
And then we see that the king of the south comes back to the king of the north, and he enters into his fortress.
A potom král juhu vchádza do kráľovstva kráľa severa až do jeho pevnosti.
So then in verse, if you follow this line, verse 9 kind of gives a summary of the previous verses.
9. verš nám dáva také zhrnutie tých predchádzajúcich.
And then verse 10
A potom 10. verš
tells us something about the king of the north. The king of the north returns now, so there's a continuing battle taking place.
10. verš nám hovorí o tom, ako sa zase navráti král severa. Should I read?
Verse 10, yeah.
No, jeho synovia sa dajú do vojny a zhromaždia množstvo veľkých vojsk, ktoré príde a zaplaví zem ako povodeň a prejde a zase sa dajú do vojny a prederú sa až k jeho pevnosti.
Okay, so you see here that there's 2 sons.
Takže sú tu dvaja synovia.
Or it doesn't say 2, but there are 2 sons. In history we see 2 sons.
Teda v dejinách vieme, že to boli dvaja synovia.
And one of them will finally enter into battle with the king of the south.
A jeden z nich iba vstúpi do tej vojny s tým kráľom juhu.
And then you see this language, it says, and he shall overflow and pass through, and he shall return and be stirred up even to his fortress.
A potom tu čítame, že príde a zaplaví zem ako povodeň a prejde a dajú sa do jeho vojny a prederú sa až k jeho pevnosti.
So what this king of the north does, he overflows and passes through.
To, čo robí král severa, je, že zaplaví a prejde.
If we follow this line and we just follow the steps of the verses, we are in verse 40 here.
Keď budeme čítať, teda keď budeme nasledovať ďalej v týchto veršoch,
I should say verse 48.
sme vo verši 40a,
Then the next waymark,
ten ďalší
or the
milník,
next event that is described in these verses,
alebo ďalšia udalosť, ktorá sa popisuje v týchto
is
veršoch,
in 1989,
je v 1989,
which is described in verse 40b,
čo sa popisuje vo verši 40b,
where the king of the north comes against the king of the south.
kde král severa príde proti kráľovi juhu. And it also comes like a flood.
Yeah, and king of the north to the king of the south. King of the north comes king of the
Král severa na kráľa juhu.
This is king of the south, king of the north, king of the south, king of the north. You can do it here as well. And the interesting thing is that in this verse 40 you see exactly the same language.
A vo verši 40 vidíme ten istý jazyk.
The king of the north.
Král
So-
severa.
Could you read the first part B?
Král severa príde na neho ako výchrica s vozmi a s jazdcami a s mnohými loďami a príde do zemi, zaplaví a prejde.
In this last part you can see that he overflows and passes through, or passes over. I don't know if it's similar language in your Bible.
Vidíme tu podobný jazyk, že zaplaví a prejde.
So you see a passing, an overflow and pass through, and an overflow and pass through. Or pass
Zaplavia.
over.
Zaplaví a prejde, zaplaví a prejde.
And it's the king of the north towards the king of the south.
A to je vlastne král severa proti kráľovi juhu.
So an interesting similarity still. We can still find these similarities.
Tu sú stále, ďalej vidíme tie podobnosti medzi jednotlivými udalosťami.
Now the interesting thing is that if you follow this line,
Ak následujete teraz v tejto línii,
the next thing we find is verse 41,
ďalší verš, ktorý nájdeme, je 41.
where the king of the north enters into the glorious land,
Kedy král severa vojde do krásnej zeme.
which we usually mark as the Sunday law.
To zaznačujeme na nedeľný zákon.
And you see that in this line as well.
A to vidíme aj tu.
That's already what we mentioned here in this waymark.
Už sme to spomínali na tomto milníku.
In verse 16,
Je to v 16. verši.
the king of the north enters into the glorious land.
Král severa vojde do krásnej zeme.
So, all these similarities are just coincidence,
Všetky tieto podobnosti sú náhodné?
or the Lord wants to show us something line upon line.
Alebo nás Pán Boh chce niečo naučiť línia na líniu?
And so far it was just a nice Bible study with comparing some verses
Zatiaľ to bolo také pekné milé štúdium, sme si porovnali jednotlivé verše,
without really consequence.
bez nejakých veľkých následkov.
But now we come to a point where we kind of have to be sure that if this is right, then it has some consequences.
Ale teraz prichádzame k bodu, kedy vidíme, že ak toto je správne, tak to má svoje následky.
Because this history doesn't really show something here in between. It has verse 40b, and then the next verse is verse 41.
Tieto dejiny neukazujú niečo medzi tým 40. a 41. veršom.
We have 1989, nothing in between, Sunday law.
Máme 89., potom nič a potom nedeľný zákon.
This line, though, shows us, this is verse 10 and this is verse 16. There are 5 verses in between that tell us something.
Ale táto línia nám ukazuje, že medzi veršom 10 a 16 ešte niečo je.
There is a history of verse 10 to 15
Sú to dejiny od 10 do 15,
that gives us some details about the king of the north and the king of the south.
ktoré nám dávajú detaily o kráľovi severa a
And
kráľovi juhu.
if we study that history, we find that there are 2 battles mentioned.
Ak budeme tieto dejiny študovať, zistíme, že sú tam ešte dve bitky, o ktorých sa hovorí.
Historically, they are known as the battle of Raphia and the battle of Panium.
A historicky ich poznáme ako bitka pri Rafii a bitka pri Panium.
And this study shows that if these similarities are not a coincidence,
A táto štúdia ukazuje, že ak tieto podobnosti nie sú náhodné,
that these 2 battles we find here in these 5 verses,
tak tieto bitky, o ktorých sa hovorí v tých 5 veršoch,
they should become a waymark in our history as well.
sú vlastne milníkom aj v našich dejinách.
And where we thought that the king of the south was finished here in 1989,
A keď sme si mysleli, že král juhu už skončil v 89.
because that's what verse 40b says, the king of the south was overflowed and passed.
To je
Overflowed.
to, čo sme pochopili z toho 40. verša, že král severa vlastne zaplavil a prešiel.
Here it shows that the king of the south is coming back,
Sa ukazuje, že ten král juhu vlastne ešte prichádza späť.
because here it says the king of the north comes against the king of the south in verse
Král severa proti
10
kráľovi
and
juhu
in verse 40.
vo verši 10 až 40.
But if you go to verse 11 and 12,
Ale keď ideme do veršov 11-12,
we see that the king of the south returns
vidíme, že král juhu sa navracia
to the king of the north.
voči kráľovi severa.
So we can expect a waymark, a event after 1989,
Môžeme očakávať milník alebo udalosť po 89.
where the king of the south returns to the king of the north,
Kedy sa král juhu navráti na kráľa severa
and he will win that battle.
a vyhrá ten boj.
And then in verse 13 and 15,
A vo veršoch 13 až 15
we see that the king of the north returns again,
vidíme, že sa znova navracia král severa
to the king of the south, and he
voči,
wins there.
voči kráľovi juhu.
This is called the Battle of Raphia,
To je bitka pri Rafii
and this is Hanium.
a Panium. Can I explain where these words are from? Rafia and Panium? From the history.
Okay, the words Raphia and Panium, they come from the particular battles that took place. That was the geographical area where they took
That
place.
happened in the upper line.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, okay. Maybe
No, it's okay, I'm just so they know.
yeah, no, just to
Vlastne tie slova Rafia a Panium pochádzajú z tých bitiek, ktoré sa odohrali v tých dejinách toho 11. až 15. verša.
so in 2017
Čiže v roku 217
and in minus 200
a 200
you have these two battles. This is verse 11
sa
and
odohrali
verse 12, and this is verse 13 and verse 15.
vo veršoch 11-12 je bitka pri Rafii a 13-15 je Panium.
This is Raphia. This is Panium. And we didn't really have here anything because of verse 40 and verse 41. For 41.
My zo štúdia veršov 40-41 sme to tam nevideli.
But this study or this line shows us that there has to happen something here.
A táto línia nám ukazuje, že sa musí niečo stať ešte tu.
You compare and contrast.
My vlastne to porovnáme, tie dve línie a dávame ich do kontrastu. Alebo.
And in this way you can create something which is not there.
A týmto spôsobom dostávame niečo, čo tam vlastne nie je priamo napísané.
The Bible doesn't tell us something about this history.
Biblia nám nehovorí priamo v tých veršoch o týchto
By
dejinách,
comparing and contrasting or by studying line upon line,
ale tým, že vlastne študujeme línia na líniu, že ich porovnávame medzi sebou a dávame ich do protikladu alebo do
we have created these two waymarks.
proste do porovnania, tak zistíme, že tu sú ešte dva milníky.
And we bring this down to our line now, and we call these two waymarks Raphia and
A
Panium.
my sme to vlastne prevedli na našu líniu a tak nazývame tieto dve bitky v našej dobe Rafia a Panium.
But you can, we see here also that we create something that is not plainly given in the Bible. We have to dig, we have to compare and contrast, we have to study line upon line.
Na to, aby sme dostali takýto výsledok, musíme vlastne porovnávať medzi sebou jednotlivé línie. Není to tam napísané všetko priamo. Musíme študovať do hĺbky a tie verše dávať spolu do porovnania.
And that's maybe a scary thing to do,
Možno je to strašidelné,
because we kind of now create things that are not there.
lebo sme vytvorili niečo, čo tam nebolo.
And maybe many people or Adventists would kind of scratch their head or just say like, hey, these people are crazy what they're doing.
A možno niektorým adventistom by sa to zdalo, že toto není ako v poriadku.
But I don't think this is a new thing. I think this is old.
Ale nemyslím, že toto je niečo nové. Toto, I think Millerites did the same.
Millerites did the same. I think Christians in general,
Milleriti to robili tiež.
if you go to how people proved that Jesus was the Messiah,
Keď sa pozrieme vlastne na proroctva, ktoré ukazovali na dôkaz, že Ježiš je Mesiášom,
they used prophecies, they used Bible texts from the Old Testament, that if you read these texts, they're not about the Messiah.
Používali vlastne texty zo Starého zákona, ktoré keď čítate, tak priamo oni nehovoria o Mesiášovi.
They are about completely something else, but the apostles or the disciples or Christ,
Hovoria úplne o inej téme, ale apoštoli Kristovi
they pointed to these verses as being a fulfillment of Christ.
vyťahli tieto verše a povedali, toto sa naplnilo na Kristovi.
And I think that's, maybe it's a little different, but I think that's a similarity of what you do here. Maybe it's not there, but we believe it's there. Maybe it's not in the verses, but we believe it's in history. That's different?
No, I don't agree.
You don't agree?
I think it's there. It's just, you have to see line upon line. I think it's there.
Yeah, but for someone who plainly reads his Bible, like let me say a general Seventh-day Adventist, or a general Christian who reads his Bible, it is not there. Yeah, I mean, the fact that you see it, praise the Lord that you see it, because you have a line upon line mind. But if you don't have the line upon line mind, it's not there in 40b. Where is it?
Vlastne tieto veci vidíme línia na líniu, ale keby sme čisto len sa pozerali na verš 40-41, tak to tam neuvidíme.
Maybe then I leave it here and then we continue this thought after breakfast.
Takže tu by som to uzavrela a po raňajkách budeme pokračovať.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Máte nejaké otázky alebo k tomu komenty?
Or things we would like to be clarified?
Niečo ešte, čo treba objasniť?
No, okay. Let's pray.
Poďme sa pomodliť.
Lord, dear Heavenly Father,
Drahý nebeský Otče,
we want to thank you for this morning study.
ďakujeme Ti za toto ráno štúdium.
Thank you that you have been with us in studying this line of Daniel 11.
Ďakujeme Ti, že si bol s nami pri študovaní Daniela 11.
That your word is so wonderfully made.
Že Tvoje slovo je tak úžasne spravené.
Lord, it maybe feels scary sometimes to invent events that are maybe not plainly written in your Bible.
Možno, že to vyzerá tak strašidelne, že ako keby sme tam niečo vymýšľali, čo tam priamo nie je napísané.
But if we study line upon line, it is so easy to see that they are actually there.
Ale štúdium línia na líniu je to tak ľahko vidieť.
Help us to really get a line upon line mind.
Prosím, daj, aby sme vedeli takto rozmýšľať.
That we can recognize these things.
Aby sme mohli rozpoznať tie veci.
Also in the things that are developing now and in the future.
Aj v pravdách, ktoré sa ešte sú len vo vývoji a v budúcnosti.
I pray that you continue to be with us this last day of our study.
Ja sa modlím, aby si bol naďalej s nami v tomto poslednom dni štúdia.
Pour out your latter rain upon us.
Prosím, vylej na nás svojho svätého ducha.
And give us a clear mind, Lord, that we will be able to understand your word.
A daj nám čisté mysle, aby sme vedeli rozumieť Tvojmu slovu.
And I pray that you bless us this last day together as a fellowship.
Prosím, aby si nám požehnal tomuto spoločenstvu.
In Jesus' name we ask.
V mene Pána Ježiša.
Amen.
Amen.